Halito, and welcome to Native ChocTalk, a podcast by natives for all. Here we're keeping our Native ancestors' stories and history alive, while also sharing with you our Native culture, traditions, and more. I'm Rachel Youngman, a Choctaw originally from Anadarko, Oklahoma. I hope you'll enjoy this journey with me as we learn from our Native American guests. And I hope you'll do me a favor. Feel free to like and share these episodes. I so appreciate it. Yakoki.
Running isn't more important than their faith, their family, and our life. I believe that my sole mission in life, no matter what I'm doing, I should be an ambassador for Christ. He knew that when I turned 40 years old, I was going to start running and using this as a ministry. I've seen it through the people that He's brought into my life as a husband, as a father, as a runner. I've just seen it each day, how He's going to use this for His glory.
See and share our stories at togetherwe'remore.com.
You're listening to part 2 of this series.
A little later, we'll talk about a fun fact relating the townspeople of today to the J.R. Williams steamer and other boats of the past. I started looking into this Cherokee, stand Watie, so let's veer off course for a moment to learn more about him. The following is taken from an article in History.com called "The Last Confederate General to Surrender Was Native American." Stand Watie, a contentious Cherokee leader who signed away his ancestral lands, fought for the South in the Civil War, terrorizing many of his own people. How did a high-standing Indian who signed away his ancestral lands in the Deep South become a general for the Confederacy during the Civil War? And why did he fight so fiercely against other Native people during the conflict? Stand Watie lived during a tumultuous time for his people and the young American nation. Throughout the 19th century, Indians were being increasingly displaced from their homelands and, in some cases, massacred. Tribal nations faced internal discord over thorny issues like slavery. Some Indians were themselves slave owners, and whether to sign treaties that often pressured them to choose between their ways of life and their survival. After the South seceded from the Union, Indians were forced to choose sides in the white man's war. Born in 1806 to a Cherokee father and mixed race, half Cherokee, half European mother in Uthkaloga, Cherokee Nation near present-day Rome, Georgia, Stand Watie was originally given the Cherokee name Degataga, meaning stand firm. As a student of the Moravian Mission School, Watie learned English and later helped his older brother publish the Cherokee Phoenix, a tribal newspaper. By the time Isaac reached young adulthood, his father, David Watie, had become a wealthy planter who owned African American slaves. Beginning in 1829, thousands of prospectors poured into Georgia after gold was discovered in Cherokee territory. Anglo settlers put increasing pressure on the Cherokee to relocate to reservations further west, a process that intensified after Congress passed the Indian Removal Act in 1830. Facing untenable choices, the Cherokee splintered into two factions. The majority, led by Chief John Ross, wanted to stay on their lands and fight for tribal sovereignty. Watie was among the minority who supported removal to the west, believing it was the only way to preserve the tribe's autonomy. In 1835, he and several others signed the Treaty of New Echota, ceding ancient Cherokee homelands in Georgia to the U.S. government in exchange for land on Indian territory in what is now Oklahoma. Watie made the move west in 1837, settling in the northeastern corner of the Western Cherokee Nation near Honey Creek. Under Cherokee law, selling tribal lands without the people's approval was punishable by death. So in 1839, members from the majority faction executed Watie's co-signers of the New Echota Treaty, his brother, his uncle, and his cousin. Watie, who barely managed to escape the same fate, became a prominent opposition figure in the Cherokee Nation's fractured politics and a blood enemy of Chief Ross. As the surviving leader of the Treaty Party, he held a position on the Tribal Council from 1845 to 1861, and he developed a successful plantation in Indian Territory with enslaved workers of his own. When the Civil War broke out in 1861, Watie wasted no time in joining the Confederacy, viewing the federal government, not the South, as the Cherokee's principal enemy. He raised the 1st Indian Regiment of the Confederate Army, the Cherokee Mounted Rifles, and helped secure control of Indian Territory for the rebels early in the conflict. Eventually, many fellow Cherokees would support and fight for the other side. Watie became known as a gifted field commander and a bold guerrilla leader. At the Battle of Pea Ridge in Arkansas in March 1862, his troops earned acclaim for capturing a Union battery in the midst of a Confederate defeat. On June 15, 1864, his men scored a major victory by capturing the Union steamboat J.R. Williams. The following September, they seized some $1.5 million worth of supplies on a federal wagon supply train at Cabin Creek. Much of his activity during the latter half of the war consisted of attacks against those in Indian Territory who supported the Union, burning homes, destroying fields, and creating thousands of starving refugees. Even after a Cherokee majority rejected the alliance with the Confederacy in 1863, Watie stayed loyal to the Southern cause. His reward, a commission of brigadier general. Watie was so committed to the Southern cause that he refused to acknowledge the Union victory in the waning months of the Civil War, keeping his troops in the field for nearly a month after Lieutenant General E. Kirby Smith surrendered the rest of the Confederacy's Trans-Mississippi Army on May 26, 1865. Watie became the last Confederate general to lay down arms, surrendering his battalion of Creek Seminole, Cherokee, and Osage Indians to Union Lieutenant Colonel Asa C. Matthews at Dokesville on June 23rd. After the war, Watie returned to Indian Territory to rebuild his home, which federal soldiers had burned to the ground. He traveled to Washington, D.C. to represent the Southern Cherokee during negotiations of the Cherokee Reconstruction Treaty of 1866, which stripped tribe members of vast tracts of land in Indian Territory in exchange for their reinstatement in the Union. Watie then retreated from public life to his old Honey Creek plantation, where he died in 1871. So I think this really shows the conflict going on amongst the tribes, conflict within the tribes and tribe against tribe about who to side with. There's a lot to unpack on that topic. But for now, let's get back to Tamaha. Whatever became of River Landing?
So after the Civil War, the river boat traffic attracted businesses. Tomahawk grew. It was actually a bustling little community. There was blacksmith shops, a general store, a bank. I actually believe there was more than one bank,
Wow.
hotels, and I believe actually more than one newspaper. I don't know if they were at the same time or not, but newspapers. There were, druggists and virtually every kind of business that you can imagine. The last steamboat came through in 1912. I don't know which steamboat that was. It's my understanding the Mary D was destroyed, unfortunately, and sank in 1909. So that was the end of her.
Farewell to the Mary D.
And the newspaper article said a diver went down and got the bell, the steering wheel. I can't remember, but definitely the bell from the Mary D. And I would love to know where that is. If anybody knows where that is, I just
Yes.
see it.
Listeners, if you know of anybody that has the bell or anything else from the Mary D, please, we just want to see it. Send us some photos. Okay, so then something tragic happened to the town in 1919, correct?
Yes, like I said, it was a bustling little community and unfortunately was struck by two fires.
Mm.
So one in 1919 or 1920 that was the first one, and mainly got the business district, but the town did rebuild after that one. But in 1930, another fire swept through, and my understanding is wiped out the entire business district in Tamaha. And that time they didn't rebuild. By that time, it was pretty obvious that that Tamaha was not going to be a main thoroughfare.
Mm.
So I think it was just not worth it. I know one of the businessmen went to Stigler and built his business up there.
Do they know what started the fires?
I believe one of them started in a drugstore, but I don't remember if it said what started it.
So the town was wiped out a couple of times. Do you ever like look around for old remnants of,
Oh,
things that used to be there?
Absolutely, absolutely. So my husband has a metal detector and he uses it. But we've also found, quite by accident, found stuff. We planted some trees recently, and it seems like every time we dig something, we find something. Now, it's not
Oh,
necessarily something of value, but little bits of crockery. When we
yeah.
were planting the trees, we pulled up a bottle that was McCormick and Company, which we know is spices. But evidently, around the turn of the century, they made cough medicines and things like that. And I think this one was probably a cough medicine bottle. It was intact. That's my favorite thing. We found an old padlock, and it's mostly rusted away. It's only about
Yeah.
half of it remains, and it's really badly rusted. But what's left, you can see that it is definitely a very old padlock. And
So
we
cool.
Yes, and we found things that really, exercise my ability to research. We found a little pulley thing with a number on it, and buried in the ground, and it took me a while to figure that out. But it turns out when the telephone operators, you remember, well, I think I remember from Saturday Night Live more than anything, but the telephone operators pulling the little plugs out and
Yep.
yep, yeah, exactly. Well, those wires had pulley weights on the bottoms of the wires
Oh,
to pull them down and keep them from getting tangled up, and that's what
yeah.
the little pulley weight is for.
Oh, that's so neat. I mean, little pieces of history. You had told me earlier that almost every time you stick a shovel in the ground, you find something. Those things are so sentimental. You can't put a price on them.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So
I think
fun.
the land that we have, I don't know this for sure because I can't find a map that says definitely, but I think it was probably pretty close to the middle of the business district or very close to the business district.
Oh, wow.
The land we live on is right on the road to where the ferry and steamboat landing would be. Um, and then the main, what is called Main Street in Tamaha, kind of ends or takes a little jog and becomes this street. So we're right off of Main Street and on the way to the ferry landing.
So neat. You're right there.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
no wonder you're finding pieces of the history there.
Yeah. There were several buildings that have been on this land at various times. We've unfortunately where I put my garden, we started tilling and ended up pulling up some old foundation pieces and old
Oh,
wire from I assume it was electric, but I don't know, but some old wire that was down there where a building had been there. It wasn't the greatest place for a garden. I ended up doing raised beds because of all the debris that's in the ground.
right. Darn the old town
Yeah.
trying to build a garden. Now, something that is still standing and is what most people know Tamaha for is the historic jail, which was built in 1886. What can you tell us about the jail?
The jail, which for those of you who might come here and see it, that's actually on our list of things in the town that we want to start restoring. We've been working on preserving history here in town, and the
Right.
jails. It's in pretty bad shape, but the stone walls still stand, and the iron bars over the windows. It's a tiny little jail. I really want to know when they used it. Um, was there a building next to it? Where was the sheriff's office at? I mean, he must have
Yeah.
had some headquarters, but the jail is one room, maybe 10 foot by 10 foot. I'm
Right. It's
honestly
so
not,
tiny.
it is so tiny. So I'm guessing the sheriff didn't work in the jail, that it was only, for
Right.
but when I first moved here, I found an audio recording of one of the residents, and it was a poor audio recording. It was on one of Oklahoma's historical websites, but it was really interesting to listen to. The man's name was Garland, and I can't remember his first name. Garland's a pretty popular name around here. There's a town
Huh.
close by, a cemetery called Garland Cemetery.
Yeah.
But he was one of the Garlands, and he said he was born and raised here in Tamaha. And I think that he might have been the first one that I heard say Tamaha, which would be the more correct pronunciation. But he
Huh.
uh, he was born and raised here, and he told the most wonderful story about the little jail. He said when he and his brother were young, they were playing in the creek, and the mailman came through, and he was very, very drunk. and he had his mail sacks on the horse, and they got to the creek, and the horse was drinking the water, and the mailman was, I can't remember word for word, but something about to fall off and lose all the mail. So the boys helped gather up everything and keep him up on his horse, and took him into town, where he was arrested and put in their brand new little jail. The first prisoner at the Tamaha jail, and his name was Prentice. And
Okay.
according to this Mr. Garland, they called the jail Fort Prentice after that. And I just love that story. I love
So
the idea of them
funny,
naming it Fort Prentice in honor of the postmaster.
right? But now the mystery is also solved as to why, Aunt Myrtle wasn't getting her mail on time,
Right. Right.
or it was all mixed up. That is a great story, and it's so small town America, which I absolutely love, the history of our towns. So I actually have a photo that I found from the Oklahoma Historical Society of the Tamaha Jail, December 10th, 1993. And the photograph was used for a story in the Daily Oklahoma newspaper. And the caption says, Bass McGuire, a former Haskell County sheriff, is on the left, and Burl Prentice, a descendant of an early day occupant of the old Tamaha jail. Look at the historic old structure. So obviously Prentice and Prentice, I'm not sure if it sounds like he's a descendant. I'm not sure if he was like a great grandfather or whatever it was, but that's pretty cool to get to see his face and all that. And again, it's an older photo, but I'll be sure to share that as well. So the Arkansas River is still a busy place today, correct?
Yes, it is still a busy area. It's part of a navigation channel, and we see barges go through here quite often. It's actually one of the things that I loved when I first moved here, because I just, for whatever reason, love seeing the barges and the towboats.
Yeah, right.
And you can watch them from town. They're out on the lakes a little distance away, but you can see them go by.
That's awesome. And you mentioned to me one time that y'all have really good fishing there, although I don't know if I should tell people that.
Oh, dude, we love having people in town. We
Oh,
do.
that's
We have
great.
good fishing. A lot of people really like fishing on the lake. Kerr Lake is the third largest lake in Oklahoma,
Oh,
but it also seems to be the least one of the least well known. So
huh.
we're fairly close to Eufaula Lake, and everybody goes over there. It's a big recreational place, whereas Kerr Lake is not as much, doesn't gather as the traffic, the same recreational traffic that Eufaula does.
Yeah.
We do have really good fishing. People really like the crappie and the catfish, especially. We also gather a lot of duck hunters in the
Oh,
winter.
really?
Actually, we kind of we kind of sit up in our little house and make fun of them because they come out in the bitter, bitter cold and put their
Well, you're
boats.
warm.
Yes, and put their boats in, and they bring axes and hammers with them, and we'll break the ice up so they can get
Oh,
out. It
wow.
freezes there here in the little inlet. So they have to break their ice and get out on the lake. But it must be good duck hunting, because
Must
last
be.
year, the first day of the season, we counted well over 50 boats and trucks.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
And
great. And again, once Oklahoma's best kept secret, now people know
yes,
that there's good fishing,
the,
good duck hunting.
the duck hunters might not be happy with me.
So is that Kerr Lake? Is that the Kerr McGee? So I know that that's kind of a big name, or was a big name in Oklahoma, right?
Yes. So Kerr-McGee, I knew it when I was young as a gas station.
Me
Um,
too. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, they don't exist anymore, but
Okay. Yeah.
or at least I don't think they do. But I believe it's the same person, certainly the same family. So Kerr
Okay.
was, and I can't remember his first name, but he was the reason why the lake is named after him is because he was a big voice getting river navigation back to Oklahoma. So, like I said,
Really?
the last steamboat landed in Tamaha in 1912. Riverboat traffic dwindled down after that. The
Ready?
Arkansas River is quite shallow and hard for the big barges to get up and down. So they
Ah.
needed to dredge it, make it deeper,
Mhm.
make it so that the large boats can navigate the river. So part of that whole project, which was started, like I said, by Kerr, was building this lake here. So a lot of lakes here
Oh,
are built for flood control. and Kerr Lake is not. It was built specifically for navigation.
Okay. Interesting. And it also sounds like there's a lot of fun that goes on in the town during the festivals, right?
Oh, yeah. So we started, like I said, we're trying to preserve history here and take care of some things. So the first one, the first big project that was undertaken by our mayor, Michelle Stallard, was the restoration of the Tamaha School. And the school
Oh,
was built in 1940 by the WPA, and it's an old stone building. Now, it hasn't been used as a school since the 1960s, but
okay.
it did have grades 1 through 8 in it before then. After grade 8, students went to Stigler, but it was a little 3 or 4 room. I thought it was 3 room, but I was recently told that the one big room was actually 2 rooms at one time. So
Okay.
3 or 4 room schoolhouse that was, like I said, was built by the WPA and is pretty neat little historic structure and had significant water damage. Part of the floor was rotted away and there was a big hole in it and we couldn't really use it. So that was the first project. We started working on the school to restore it. So one of our fundraising efforts was to start a little festival. There is a rock outside of town. When you're coming to town, you can't help but see it. It's painted bright yellow and it has a smiley face on it, and everybody calls it Smiley Face Rock or Smiley Rock. So we started this
Uh,
little festival and called it the Smiley Face Rock Festival, even though it's not really a rock festival. It was
right.
named after the rock. So every year we do that and we sell t-shirts, we have live music, we have food. Last year we had a bingo game and that was a big hit. So we're going to do that again this year with fun prizes and such.
Oh, so
It's just
neat.
a neat little town gathering. Like I said,
Yeah.
we're on the road to nowhere. You're not coming here unless you mean to. So it's not a huge gathering. We don't get a lot of traffic, but it is definitely a wonderful little event.
It really does sound like a lot of fun. And it's in
Uh,
September usually, right?
yes. So this year it's on September 14th. But we don't have an exact date chosen for every year. But you can learn about it on. We have a couple of Facebook pages. So the school itself has a Facebook page called Tamaha School Restoration. Another group for the Tamaha community called Tamaha Community.
Okay. All right. So funds go to both the little school and then the jail, correct?
So yeah, right now they all go to the school.
Okay.
Where that's the current project. We have a lot done. We have new windows. We have the what we call the big room is completely finished. We got the big hole in the
Great.
floor repaired and it's ready to use. Um, the kitchen has a weak spot in the floor.
Hmm.
Evidently, before I moved here several years ago, they used to have community meals at the kitchen or at the Tomahawk School, and we're hoping to bring that back. That's one of our
Oh,
goals.
fun. Like a little place for the community to get together
Yes,
like that.
exactly, exactly. We're a long ways from anywhere, and residents have to go all the way to Stigler to get groceries and stuff. There's no services like Meals on Wheels or anything that serve
Mm.
this area. So our hope is to have not only food, but also that it be a gathering place that people can come and visit. And some of our elderly residents are more isolated, so we're hoping
Yes.
to be able to bring them together.
Well, I hope our listeners are taking note because if you have a special talent like carpentry, or you can donate time, money, whatever, sounds like there is some need there. So hopefully we can all come together and be of support to this community. And it is a very historical community. And the funny thing is, Cheryl and I, my cousin, we drove by that little school and we're sitting there going, I wonder what the history is of that school. And now we know.
So it was, like I said, it was built by the WPA, and for anybody that doesn't know what that is, it's the Work Progress Administration, the Work
Okay.
Administration, and it was to put specifically men to work during the Great Depression. Yeah, so they built sidewalks and roads and bridges and schools and such, and
Yeah.
school here was one of those projects.
Well, speaking of history, we talked earlier about the J.R. Williams Union steamboat and how there was that Civil War naval battle there on the Arkansas River. Didn't Tamaha have a celebration and someone brought a cannonball that was found in the area?
Yeah, so there was and I've heard that there were several cannonballs found, but I've only ever seen the one. So at one of
Okay.
our Smiley Face Rock festivals, one of the local citizens brought it so that we could put it on display, and it was, a
Oh,
cannonball from that battle, which I thought that was really neat.
that's fascinating. So is the J.R. Williams itself still in the Arkansas River today?
So there's nothing to see now.
Okay.
In 1998, they sent a dive team down to look for it. And they searched and found a spot that they thought was the J.R. Williams, and they brought a few things to the surface. So some old bits of rusted. As you can imagine, it was deteriorated,
Yeah.
but they believed that
Oh,
it was from the J.R. Williams. Now, I read an article recently from one of the residents, and he said that when he was young, so this is a gentleman that people call Big and Peck, and which I love his name, Big and Peck. How can you not love
yes. That's pretty cool.
it? So he said when he was young, about 10, that you could actually see the J.R. Williams. Uh,
Are you serious?
Yeah, yeah. He
That's
said that he was
amazing.
one of the smokestacks, but a flood
Oh,
came later and washed that away. Now, of course, that would have been before Kerr Lake was here, but
okay. Well, I'd like to talk a bit about your husband Kelly's story. Now, his granny Annie was half Choctaw and had land allotments near Quinton, Oklahoma, which isn't far from McAllister. Is the homestead still there today?
so the land is still there. Nobody's built on it. You can see basically where the house was. There's an old car there that my husband remembers his whole life. He says, as far as he knows, it's been there his whole life. It's a
Wow.
beautiful piece of land. There's a hill, and it's, just a very pretty little piece of land. Well, large piece of land, actually.
Oh, because I'm always trying to figure out if my listeners have mutual acquaintances with my guests or their spouses, I'll mention that Annie's maiden name was Dunn, Dunn. So if we have any Choctaw Dunns out there, let us know. Annie married a man with the last name Brannan and owned the land next to her. But going back to the Dunn name, Miss Annie had a brother. Tell me what his name was.
So his name was Wilson Dunn, but if you want to look for him in old newspapers and such, you would search for Wild Wilson Dunn.
Wild Wilson Dunn. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, he was a boxer, uh,
Okay.
and was known for his antics, from what I understand. Um, so, in various places, I found references to him being called a full-blood Cherokee and a full-blood Osage. So I think he was a bit of an opportunist. He would call himself whatever he wanted
Right.
to bring people to the fight. Uh, Several newspaper articles mentioned his unorthodox fighting style. And
Ah.
one I found, which was definitely one of my favorite, likened him to an octopus throwing punches from every direction.
Awesome.
So there are several. I found lots of information about him after my husband started talking about him. I loved the stories he would tell. Actually, one story he told was the first time his mom ever saw Wilson. Wilson was actually out, and I don't know whose they were, because as far as I know, he didn't have any kids, but he was outside washing diapers for somebody, and just had a towel around his waist is all he was wearing. And my husband's mom saw him, and she said he was the prettiest man she ever saw.
Oh,
Kelly's dad said that he didn't
my.
have a six-pack, he had a 12-pack. He was pretty well built. But
Out
he
there
won.
washing diapers.
Exactly. I love that story. At that time, I guarantee that none of the men in my family were washing diapers. I'll just leave it at that.
Right.
So I just love that he would do that.
Wild Wilson Dunn will do it for you, the little octopus that he was. He was only like 170 pounds, right?
I believe that's right. I don't remember the exact weight, but
He's a little
he
Choctaw
won
man.
102 fights.
What?
Um,
Oh, he did?
he did. He lost 35 and had 12 draws. So his record was not, it's a pretty good record. He must have,
Yeah.
his unorthodox style must have worked well for him.
Yes, and unorthodox. Like he wore a full war bonnet and he was a big talker, but he had some kind of crazy tie to the Beverly Hillbillies. What was that about?
He did. So I don't know how many people know this, but the actor that played Jethro, um,
Uh-huh.
his name is Max Baer Jr. And his father was Max Baer and was a boxer. And he was, I believe, a heavyweight champion. He
Oh,
was considerably larger than Wilson Dunn. But they had a bout in San Antonio.
how
And
neat.
yeah, now Wilson did lose that round.
I bet he did.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I believe he was thrown out of the ring a couple of times. Um, but he was definitely the crowd favorite. So when Max Baer won, he was booed out of the arena. The people did not like he was so much bigger than Wilson, and the people
Yeah.
didn't like the tactics that he used and thought he kind of bullied him around unnecessarily.
Oh, well, and it just goes to show, like you said, Wilson Dunn was a crowd pleaser. They loved him.
Yes, yes.
But what an ironic story, small world. I read some newspaper articles on newspapers.com about this Wild Wilson Dunn, and I just picture him as like a scrappy, smack talking dude. Well, here's an article from the Muskogee Daily Phoenix from November of 1930. Colorful Indian scrapper to be on next Legion boxing program. Wild Wilson Dunn will tangle with Red Foster. By far the most colorful fighter in Oklahoma and perhaps in the Middle West, will appear on the American Legion boxing program, which will be staged at Convention Hall Tuesday night. He is none other than Wild Wilson Dunn, West Tulsa Indian, who resembles an octopus in action. Because it appears that he is throwing a dozen or so fists, which are delivered from all angles. I love that it states he resembles an octopus in action, as you mentioned earlier. But here's a letter I found on boxrec.com. Where Wild Wilson Dunn wrote in July of 1933 to the sports editor Bob Ingram at the El Paso Herald Post, alias Wildcat Dynamite, noticed in your sports column that proposed fight cards have been postponed from time to time by Mr. Sage Rose, promoter for the American Legion, for lack of opponents, and here I am raring to go. Let me have that big shot, High Litter, you boast so often in your sports column. Litter is just a flat wheel fooling the public. I'll knock his ears down on his shoulders. I will slap him to the white blister and then break the blister. I'm an Osage Indian, full-blooded and on the warpath looking for scalps. The last four fights were won by me by the knockout route. My victims were Tommy White, Jackie Gibbs, Clyde Chastain, and Kyo Kid Wright. I can take Jack Rogers, High Litter, Bert Colima, and Ernest Seg all in the same ring the same night and whip all of them. So definitely a scrappy octopus. So I'll be sure to post a photo of Wild Wilson Dunn in his so-called Osage headdress on my Native ChocTalk Facebook page. So, Tonia, it's been a lot of fun learning about the history of Tamaha, the jail, and ferry landing. And hellos to the people of Tamaha. And I hope someday to join you in your festivities. I'd love to see one of those cannonballs too. So please make sure one of those is there if I come. I'd also like to thank one of my guests from this season, Jimmy Stevens, who pulled some research for me on Tamaha and the Tamaha jail. So thank you, Jimmy. Tonia, before we go, are there any words of wisdom you'd like to share with us today?
Only that it's been so fun learning about the history of the town. It's been, following rabbit trails and looking at little tidbits. And I could say, well, I haven't found that much, but every little tidbit is just so interesting and tells a story by itself. Um, so you mentioned newspapers.com earlier. There's a lot of information that I found about the town and just fun little things. I would encourage anybody to research the area that they're from. Oklahoma has such great history, and there's some really good
Amen.
resources online. The Oklahoma Historical Society and some archives and such. that mentions some fantastic things. So if you find it interesting, research it and write it down. If you have elders in your family that tell stories, write it down. There are so many things that are lost because they weren't shared, or they weren't written down, or the family forgot. So those stories that maybe you don't think they're very interesting, but people will find them interesting. I promise. It's any historical information that you have, any little stories or anything of the sort. It's always good to share.
Well, and I love the idea of, if nothing else, it's passing it on for the next generations, because people come along like yourself and myself, and we're just starving for that information and those histories so that we can help preserve it. You are speaking my language with everything that you just said right there. Please, listeners, I hope you will take note. That was perfect. Though much of the original boats, ferry landing, and buildings of the town of Tamaha are gone with the wind, I encourage you to visit and see the small jail that still stands bravely today. You might also find the original landing site where the Choctaw disembarked after their long journey from Mississippi. Even if it's just a whisper in the wind, those who came before us still have much to say in the few remnants that remain. Perhaps if we're still and soak it all in, we'll learn something along the way ourselves. So thank you, Tonia, for joining me in Yakuki.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Native ChocTalk. Be sure to join our community on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and check us out at nativechoctalk.com. Stay tuned for the next episode. You're going to love it. Yakuki. Thank you, my friends.